Okay, I'm retaking this unboxing video again because I kind of babbled on a bit more than I should have on the other one, and as I usually am not that focused. But anyways, this is it. I'm not sure when I'm going to show this. Probably I was planning to do it at least a week after I actually have this, just to give it some wear time and before I come forward and show what it is and the value of it. At least what I see, my perceived value in it for myself. And this is a topic I want to maybe briefly talk about, and that is in regards to watches and guilty pleasures. And there's two kinds of guilty pleasures, really. There are the kind for watches. There are the kind that, you know, it's a nice watch and you spent a lot of money on, which you probably shouldn't have. Maybe you got other expenses, or maybe you didn't tell your significant other and you're feeling guilty-ish about that. And yeah, there's that kind of guilty pleasure. That's not the kind I'm talking about. And there's the other kind that where there's you find pleasure in something and you kind of lie about it, you know, or you're not totally honest about it to other people just because you don't think they'd understand, or you know, you might even be somewhat embarrassed about it because, you know, oh, this is, you know, people may look down on what you like, or you know, think, well, you know, it's, you know, everyone's going after so much maybe a little bit higher standards, and why are you buying something at this level, that type of thing. And that's what I'm talking about in terms of guilty pleasures. You know, it's kind of like, oh, you don't want to admit that you like watching Jerry Springer regularly, but you do, or something like that. Or you watch 90210, but you won't tell it to your guy friends, but if you see girlfriends talking about, you're all up in that conversation, that type of thing. Different topic, but it's kind of along those lines. You know, it's like, for whatever reason you like something, it's maybe for, you know, the crowd you hang out with, or, you know, may not understand why you like it, and so you don't really come forth with that kind of truth about yourself. And, you know, you really shouldn't hide that. Actually, you should always be honest and own up to whatever it is that you like or dislike. And you know, everyone's different. So with that out of the way, this is my guilty pleasure. It is a rebuy. I owned this, at least 5 years ago or more. I see, it's 2018 now. I just started, and I think the last time I collected, the first part when I collected was around 2010 for about almost 3 years. So yeah, it's about 5 years probably since I've owned this particular watch last. And I actually paid less. I think I got on sale on what was Shop NBC at that time. Now it's Evine. It's basically the same thing, and for like $60-70, which I thought was totally worth it. I wouldn't pay full retail or whatever they suggested, which is about regularly $349, and then they always have something that shows that it's on sale. And it's not even, I don't even think it's worth $200, and even $150 is stretching it for myself. But with the Honey app on Google browser, you can, I guess it's a plugin rather, it'll automatically find discount codes for wherever you're shopping, and it'll apply them and test them out, and it'll give you the one that should yield you the most savings. So in the end, I spent about $99 on this, which is, I think that's reasonable. Maybe more than that. Even $120, I'd take, I don't know, it's $20, but you know, but around $100, I think this is pretty good value for what you get. And that is Stauer. Sounds German, doesn't it? I believe it's still an American company, but I don't know. Not a fancy box, but that is the name of the watch brand. I guess you consider it a micro brand. And not many people know about this, I think. Only a handful. If you probably shop online for your watches mostly, and don't spend over a certain amount. but they're kind of known for doing a lot of homage pieces, and classic ones like I'd show you. Let me see, watches, automatics. Here, I'll just give you a brief look at some of their stuff here. Obviously, there's some Rolex inspired, some Cartier, some other vintage watches. Yeah, and even I think this is supposed to be like a JLC, just given these vents in the square shape, but it's definitely not a reverso. I have to tell you, most of this stuff I don't really care for. I think it's I'd rather try and get the real thing, or some other brand that might do these quote-unquote homages or reproductions or inspired pieces, whatever you want to call it, better. And here, I think the best one that they do probably is like one of these styles, like this. Obviously, it's kind of like a Navitimer, yeah, that's probably the best one out of everything. Except, I wouldn't even bother with those. This piece here is called. Gonna have to edit that out. This piece here is called the. Okay, I'm gonna open it with one hand if I can't. Okay. And voila, it's always got this reflection. And I did open it already, so otherwise it would be bound down and covered up in some plastic here. But this is Stauer Ritorno, Ritorno, 1944. And let me open up the web page here. And yeah, Ritorno, 1944. And again, it's regularly supposedly $349, on sale $179, and I think when you sign up or whatever, you can get another 40% or probably $40 off, I think, and that'd still be around $140. So, and I basically got it down to $99. I suggest you download the Honey app. Not paid, but it does help. It saved me, got me some great deals on watches. Coupon codes you would have to normally search and maybe not even find, and it kind of knows them. There's a database, anyways. And here's the story about this. They found our most important watch in a soldier's pocket. Summertime, 1944. A weathered and weary U.S. sergeant is walking in Rome, only days after the Allied liberation. He finds an interesting timepiece in a store just off Via Veneto. He loved the way it felt in his hands and the hunter's back that opened to reveal a secret compartment. Besides the Purple Heart and Purple Bronze Star, my father cherished this watch because it was a reminder of the best part of the war for any soldier, the homecoming. He named the watch Ritorno for homecoming. According to the Complete Guide to Watches, the rare heirloom is now valued at $42,000. Woohoo! We wanted to bring this piece of history back to life in a faithful reproduction of our Stauer 1944 Ritorno timepiece. We've used the 27 jewel movement, reminiscent of the best watches of the 1940s. This automatic masterpiece is as simple as it is stylish. Just wear it and it winds. We hope it reminds you to take time and enjoy simpler things in life. The back of the watch opens to reveal a handy mirror and a compartment where you can add a picture of your loved ones to take with you wherever you go. And after all, a homecoming isn't a homecoming without the love of the ones who live there. And that's what's truly valuable. So that's a pretty fantastic story, isn't it? And I have a funny thing to tell you about this, and I actually recorded it earlier, and I'll add it to the end of this video. But I did email Stauer about this story because I was curious, what is this watch that is supposedly is a faithful reproduction of, and that is this, this GI or whatever from in World War II, and he got this you know, obscure watch from Italy after the war, I guess, and you know, he's got medals, and he's you know, it's valued at $43,000 here, and according to the Complete Guide to Watches, which is actually a real book, so it's not, that isn't made up. And you know, I like the name of the sound, Ritorno. You know, I think it's Italian for homecoming. You know, it's a nice story, right? And I asked him about this, like, what is this? You know, I want to be able to tell people if they see this timepiece on my wrist, what exactly is this modeled after, supposedly. And so then I can tell them, instead of this somewhat nice but vague story. And I will add the response from that at the end of this video. So looking at this timepiece closer, what I liked about it was the design. It always captured me when I first saw it online. It's like, you know, it's got this nice vintage charm to it, you know, and the story sure sells it as such. It's got a champagne dial. It's radiant. It's very nice. And it's a automatic and a triple date, right? It's got day, month, and date. And it's got applied indices and gilt. You know, it's gold. And it's actually got a tachymeter. I don't know if you can see it in this the contrast here. It's right on the very outer edge. You can kind of make it out over here too. And it's got pushers, but no, these are not. This is not a chronograph, unfortunately. These pushers actually quick set the day with it's down. The day is set with this, and this sets the month just by pushing it out, click around, and you set the date with the first position on the crown. Is usually, it's not a screw down. They say it's 40 millimeters, but from my quick measurements with a crude ruler, I believe the case is actually 38, which is what I remember them advertising this as when I first bought this from, again, Shop NBC. But maybe if you include this hinge or the crown, it might be basically 40. I don't know where they get their measurements from, but I think it is more like a 38, which is perfect. It's a good size. And you can see the date window there. It's a little bit recessed. I don't know if you can see that. And in some cases it could be hard to read because a shadow could drop right over it and obscure it a bit. But it's not too bad actually. I mean, you know, you look on it pretty dead on. It'll read right straight through. And if you look at it closely, check it out. Do you see there's a reflection right in that window? It looks like there's actually a piece of glass in there too, covering it, which is pretty cool. You know, I've never seen that, an actual extra crystal glass. I assume that's what it is, not plastic, underneath there. Excuse me, I'm just got sick and my voice might get kind of hoarse. And it's possible even that this little window is actually magnified as well. I have a hard time seeing, but that's a guess. It would help, you know, make the numbers even larger, but it's not bad. And I did notice one little fault in this. See right there on this indice, there's a little bit of a scratch or something right there, and the rest of it's pretty decent. Yeah, that was a little bit of a bummer, but you know what, whatever. I'm not tripping over it because you know, I spent basically $100 on this, and you know, I'm not expecting heaven and earth, and I wanted this to come off as an old kind of vintage timepiece anyways, even though it probably really isn't. It actually isn't. And so having a little bit of flaws or whatever, not bad. And really, with my eyesight and the scale of this, because I'm right up close, you're really never going to see that except for the right lighting, and it doesn't really bother me for what you're getting. And I'll show you too. case back. Nothing fancy, just the logo, not deeply engraved. It's probably just lightly laser etched. I'm not really giving a crap about that, and I'm thinking there's a way I might even polish the heck out of this out, make it just completely clean. I don't know, not a big deal. It is what it is, and I'm okay with it. It has a hunter case back, and so I know this requires a little bit of it's held in pretty securely, so I'm going to put this down and open it. And I popped it open, and you get a display back for the movement. And it is decorated, if you can see. Certain lighting, you can actually see that it looks like Gilty, but it's got this extra texturing going down it too, kind of diagonally. And I don't know if I've ever seen that particular style before. It's not heavily decorated, but it's got something at least. Again, for $100, it's kind of what I expected. And honestly, even some Seikos that cost about double or more don't even have quite this much decoration on the back, to be honest. So I don't know what the movement is. I'm not really sure. Probably if I pushed them and asked, they could probably tell me. But I'm pretty certain it's most likely a Chinese movement, probably some sort of seagull. Although I'm not familiar with a seagull that has this particular kind of complications. There you can use the push buttons to fast set it and everything. But more than likely, at this price point, it probably is. And I don't really care because, you know, really, a lot of the Chinese movements, they aren't as bad as they sound on surface. Oh, a Chinese movement. No, I mean, the Seagull's done some nice stuff. They've even done tourbillons, and I've had actually quite a bit of experience with them. And I think people who say it's crap right up front never really have, or at best, maybe they did have one experience and it's an up to par. But I think it's mostly a mental block in their head that thinks, oh, if it's Chinese, I'm not supposed to believe it's good. It can't possibly be better than my several $100, $1,000, you know, Swiss or even Japanese timepiece. And that's really not the case. If you really give it a chance, you can get some fantastic automatic movements that do the job for a great price, and as long as the overall case and design of the watch is quality and unique and you really like it, I think that's all that matters. And that's just kind of the case with this one. That's my guilty pleasure. It's like, what is this brand? It's so small, I don't even know about it, and they don't even strictly concentrate on watches. I think they do jewelry and other things, and it's got this Chinese movement in it, and it's got sort of it doesn't really truly have the history that I think it says that it's deriving from here. It's more basic than that, and it'll be explained when I read the email from Stauer later at the end of this video. But yeah, I mean, so far, I have to tell you, since I set it about 8 o'clock this morning, I believe it's been keeping time with my other watch here. My hold on a second. And let's see if I can do this without getting too much glare. Mark 1, 2. The Stauer was about Mark 1. Yeah, it's basically still about a second ahead of the Seiko. And it's been for the past 3 hours. And first I thought I was running a bit fast, and maybe is slightly Mark 1. So, yeah, not bad though. It's still about a second ahead of Mark 1, 2. Maybe he's gone up to 2 seconds now. But it's basically seems to be holding more or less the way that my other watches, Seikos, and some Swiss watches are. It's not that bad. And I believe the screw back I probably can get in there and mess around with that regulator and just nudge it just a tad bit to slow it down, and that'll be fine. And anyways, this is a, well, let me finish up here. There's a vanity mirror. You can even use it to probably out in the field, if you have this, to signal someone across the valley or even a plane. And yeah, other than that, how is this case? You know, it's alright. It is what it is. That's the job, but when it's on there, it snaps and it holds very securely. There is no wiggle or wobble. And it does actually have a clip around here to hold a photo, which is pretty cool. And this is what drew me to this watch too, is that you can make it even personal by putting like my daughter or my wife or whatever in here too, and probably a black and white photo would be the most appropriate, or something vintage faded. And that'd be kind of neat to have with this. Yeah, so it snaps in place. Yeah, I think the size is pretty good. I mean, you just compare it to the Seiko here. This is 40. This should be, I mean, at best, at most it will be 42, but as they say, as one place says, but I think it's actually a 38 if I measured it right, but I'll check it again later. Still a very good size, and actually it wears slightly smaller because the dial is, you got a bit of more bezel here than this, and so the dial makes it look a little bit smaller. And height wise, it is a tiny bit, well, this is on a NATO, but I'm pretty sure this watch is slightly thicker than the Seiko, not by a whole lot. Seiko, I think, is around 13, I think under 14 millimeters, and this should be about 15 if the specs are right online. And granted, you know, the case back curves a bit. It'll probably sink into the wrist another millimeter, maybe 2, so it'll wear on the wrist more like a 13. And the lugs obviously angle down very sharply, and they're very short, so this fits a lot of wrists very good. And I think it's a handsome piece. Let me just quickly show you on the wrist. Okay, on the wrist, 38 or like 40 maybe. And it's about 15 on the wrist side. It's not too bad. It's got some heft, but I think it's because obviously you have that 100 case back, which basically is an extra layer between that and the actual case back with the display. But I don't mind. It's not intrusive, and this kettle shape is what I would call this, is very charming, and it's smooth, so it's going to actually slip over or under cuffs pretty easily. I don't wear my cuffs ever that tight, and so I think people trip in over even 13 millimeter thick watches. It's like, damn, how tight do you wear your sleeves? Yeah, well, that's not me, and this actually would probably work under that just fine. But this is kind of why I like it. It's got this charming appeal to it, and it looks mid-century, but yet really there isn't anything that I've seen online that's quite like it. And I think it's actually original, for me at least. It's a fairly original design that's very vintage, you know, mid-century inspired kind of feel and look to it, but it's all its own. And I think that's why it works for me, and I bought it back again because it just looks like a nice watch. I mean, and it runs actually surprisingly better than it would. I think something at this price point, and likely probably made in China or something would be, but you know, not everything bad in China, especially these days. There's so many good things that they're making that's very good price and compete with a lot of Japanese and German stuff. At least I can say that for the camera world with lenses. They've had some really cool stuff that comes out that just it holds its own very well. And it's not all about ultimate sharpness either. If you want that, sure, go get a much more expensive lens. But for the price that what you save on the lenses, you can get like really pretty, very good image quality with unique bokeh, the background blur, which people like, and it's relatively sharp, and you get some unique characteristics from those types of lenses. Anyways, yeah, I'm gonna go into a review about this more later and kind of recap it after I've tested it for about a week or so, seeing how well it's holding and my thoughts on it. But I've been doing a few rebuys, and yeah, I do find that a lot of them I end up eventually selling again, which is stupid. But sometimes you just need you're just so convinced you need a second look at something again because it's just stuck in your head, and you just have to try it. And if you really like it, it'll stay. And if for some reason the second time around doesn't do it, I think you'll sell it, and you'll probably never come back to it again. That will be that, and that's how it's been for some of the other watches I bought back. But since this is only about $100 and it's quite charming, and I think it's unique, I haven't seen anything new or old that looks exactly like this. This could be a winner. Anyways, that's about it. Check out my video response to the email I got back from Stauer regarding their story on this watch here. It's kind of funny, and I put a response back to them, and what my thoughts are on this at the end of the day is what it is, which is an original design that's vintage inspired from in the mid-century period or so. And from a micro brand, and that's basically it, and that's the value that I see in this, And the history, well, there is no real history with this other than the ones that you make with it, as it should be with a lot of your beloved watches, I think. There's what comes with a watch, and ultimately what you put into it and take home or take with you wherever, and are able to keep with you and make memories with this on your wrist, right? Okay, later. Okay, so I don't know where I'm going to stick this in this video or somewhere else, but I was emailing Stauer about this watch design and the story that they put on there about, let me just show you here. We found our most important watch in a soldier's pocket. Summertime 1944, a weathered and weary U.S. sergeant is walking in Rome only days after the Allied liberation. He finds an interesting timepiece in a store just off of Via Veneto. He loved the way it felt in his hands and the hunter's back that opened to reveal a secret compartment. Besides a purple heart and bronze star, my father cherished this watch because it was a reminder of the best part of the war for any soldier, the homecoming. He nicknamed the watch Ritorno for homecoming, and according to the Complete Guide to Watches, the rare heirloom is now valued at $42,000. Woohoo! We want to bring this piece of history back to life in a faithful reproduction of our Stauer 1944 Ritorno timepiece. And yada yada yada. Right, so I asked him about the story because it's a good story, right? It sounds really good, and it kind of lends itself to the romanticism about this design and that period and all that. They painted up the story pretty good. And I asked him, "Oh, what is this watch that they're talking about? Is it? I can't find any reference. They don't say anything about it." And yeah. And I was just curious. Can you tell me what it is? I'd like to know, so in case someone asks me where this watch came from, I don't sound like a jackass saying, "Oh, it's actually a real watch from World War II that this is designed a exact reproduction of," and I don't know what the brand is or anything, but it's supposed to be that. And this is the response I got today, the next day. Dear preferred customer, thank you for your inquiry. The watch is a replica of a 1944 Army timepiece. It is just a replica of the style of the timepiece, not an actual watch. You see that? It's already a generic terminology, 1944 Army timepiece. I looked that up, right? 1944 Army timepiece. Google. And you see here, these match the period. You know, you got omegas, you got, you know, these Longines, and anything with an arrow usually, you see right up there, usually indicates the military service or something, right? At least with the British, as far as I understand it. And you got some, I think, sort of aviation pieces, but very classic, simple field watches. A lot of them with small seconds. A lot of them just simple central seconds, but that's it. And nothing that looks like this with a date and all, which you would consider what, a triple date? Is that what you call it? Month, day, and date. Yeah. So it's a little bit disappointing, and I kind of knew it was probably most likely a bogus story, just to sell and add to the romanticism or to the design of this piece. So here's my response to them, alright? And in so many words, okay, thanks. So the story on your website about the watch is completely made up and fictional, or it is real, but actually is about a completely different watch and has nothing to do with the Ritorno 1944 sold. So I gave them the quote, you know, from their exact words on the website. We found our most important watch in a soldier's pocket. Summertime, you know, yada yada, all the way down to faithful reproduction, right? And we'll actually some right there. We wanted to bring this timepiece history back to life in the faithful reproduction of our Stauer 1944 Ritorno timepiece. And then I add there, it sure sounds like you're trying to sell the Ritorno as a true reproduction of the supposed actual watch bought back in World War II, described in the story. So there is no real, truly faithful reproduction, since it is not an actual watch as told in the story. Just wanted to be clear so I don't sound like an idiot explaining the design to someone that it is an actual design from a specific watch reference when it really is not. Right? It isn't. A bit disappointing as the story sounded so good, but it's completely bogus. I think it would be more honest and less disappointing to have described the Ritorno timepiece as an original watch design inspired by mid-century timepieces of the 1940s/WW2 World War II era. I feel that would be more accurate and truthful than what you've written up for this timepiece. Still, it's a good-looking timepiece, and why I rebought it in the first place, rather second place, because this is a buyback. And so far, running pretty well. Testing it for about 2 weeks or so to gauge how good or bad it is keeping time and its basic functions. But so far, I mean, it's only been about an hour or so, but I don't think it's been more than, it's been holding up pretty good. I can't have my other watch in the other hand. And let's see, this is just passing up on, let's see, 35. Yeah, it's still about, I set this about a second ahead of this guy. And so it's about the same position, I think. We'll see. I might have to jump in there and slow it down if I feel it's going too fast, but so far it's definitely acceptable. And so anyway, thanks for your reply and clarification. And yeah, I mean, I thought that was funny. But at least I got them to admit it, and I know that this is a complete bogus story right here. Or at least maybe it's a real story, but it's nothing to do with the actual watch that's being sold here. And that's fine. now that I know that, I mean, I'm taking it as what I wrote to them. That it will, this is basically an original design. I've never seen a watch quite in this configuration. Maybe with the date and all that, but not in this vintage style and everything. It's just different.
On the design that we did for McCollum Jet Services,
yeah,
they want the...
Okay, so what I was saying, this is an original design. There's nothing that looks quite like this. It's definitely vintage inspired. If you told me that it was from the 1940s or so, I'd believe it. It looks like it. Has a lot of the characteristics, and that's basically what I take it as. As a, basically it's a micro brand. Although they don't just sell watches, but yeah, it's still, not a big name in watches, obviously. But they came up with a design that's, I feel, is relatively original, although it looks like something you could have seen, but I've looked all over online, I've never seen anything quite like this. And so it's original and it's inspired to give you that vintage flavor and look, and that's okay. I can live with that because that's why I like it. It looks old and vintage, yet it's modern, and it probably will hold up just as well as any modern watch, within reason. We'll see over time, but yeah, and it's got some nice complications, a triple date, the champagne look, I don't know, and the hunter's back, put a picture, and it's just it's actually quite an appealing watch. Good size at about 38, maybe 40 millimeters, if you count the hinge and the crown guard, or crown, there's no guard, but I think I measured the case really quickly, and it's actually even closer to a 38, and I like the brush finishing. Anyways, I'll go into more of a review about this and recap this once I've had a chance to test it out and give you a good feedback on how it actually performs and whether it's worth the $99 I paid for this. And so far, I really can't deny that it actually probably is. Despite the bogus story and probably a Chinese movement, but everything besides that, original execution, and so far so good, the timekeeping, if it all adds up and then some, why not? Alright, thanks.